There's really no need for unnecessary fluff, so I'll just be jumping right into my thoughts, and I'll be breaking down why the fandom is becoming more toxic in 4 sections. The simple answer? Oda writes the manga for himself, or more appropriately, himself when he was a young boy. If you're over the age of 18, you are not the target audience. Unfortunately, as the One Piece fandom has aged the manga or anime, it's become increasingly entitled and self-seeking. Certain attributes of the series do not necessarily grow with you as a reader, and that is the issue that people are constantly running into. What I'm referring to are elements of Oda's illustration or his writing, such as his preference for goofiness over badassery, or a combination of the two. An example of where this toxicity spawns out of this particular quirk is when you'll see commenters calling characters trash, calling them fodder, calling them boring, because they are designed in a comedically absurd way. This even occurs with characters that are high-ranking or portrayed in a formidable light. For instance, Oda introduced a new headliner of the Beast Pirates, a mid-tier commander that is canonically equal in ranking to characters like Basil Hawkins, with a hilariously strange and unfitting design. Obviously due to the faulty smile devil fruits, a lion's upper body is attached to his stomach, and has a named attack for swiping his balls. This brand of lunacy portrayed the build-up to an otherwise menacing figure's presence. Oda utilizes this kind of expectation reversal frequently, but the Western fandom, taking their own Seven Samurai-esque ideas about what the Wano antagonist might be like, paint a completely different conceptualization of the Beast Pirates and the Wano country samurai. Oda stays true to his wacky roots that appeals more to children than adults. The fandom does know this, but always keeps a stubborn mindset that everything in the manga will always be aimed at them. So if they don't like it, then the series or whatever arc is occurring is suddenly garbage. No matter how old you grow, this probably won't change, because it's natural to assume you're the target audience. Where this gets worse, however, is in the subset of people attacking others for enjoying certain characters, arcs, or story beats. I've seen this happen countless times, where certain individuals will insert their opinion into random debates, almost looking for confrontation with those of the opposite view. If you enjoyed a chapter, too bad, others didn't. Now your opinion is supposedly worthless. Now I'm not suggesting that negative stances should be frowned upon or dismissed, but rather that a subset of the fandom is increasingly going out of their way to ruin others' enjoyment, instead of reflecting on the fact that maybe the manga isn't always going to appeal to their sensibilities. I've been a fan of One Piece for approximately 7 to 8 years, and so I began watching the anime when it hit the massive climactic war of the Marineford saga. This was a period in which a noticeable influx of more casual battle shonen fans approached the series for the first time, like my teenage self. War arcs are an obvious interest booster, especially when One Piece had typically been perceived as a goofier, less serious sibling of the big 3 manga back in the time. Now suddenly, people are realizing that the manga or the anime might actually cater towards their battle-orientated appetite. It wet the lips, so to speak. But what happens when the fandom experiences massive growth from people that were not fully accustomed to Oda's style of writing? The crowd and reception of chapters becomes increasingly narrow-minded. Not bad-mouthing them too much, but I have 2 friends who watched One Piece because they were solely interested in fights that others are talking about in the Enies Lobby and Marineford arcs. So the 2 elements I want to focus on are the wins and the losses. What I mean by this is the perceived feats of characters within the series, or lack thereof. Now I'm not saying this type of discussion wasn't prevalent before Marineford, because I've researched old forum posts and there definitely was comments surrounding this topic. I also appreciate the fact that Oda himself has set up these conversations, with bounty posters and character rivalries. The issue is that these debates are now becoming an integral part of One Piece discussions, in the same way that Dragon Ball fans endlessly chatter and insult each other over petty power comparisons. A character's worth is not solely measured by their feats, perceived badassery, or strength. Oda does not weigh into these questions much in SVSs, and neither should you. One Piece has never been about clear-cut power levels or impressively intimidating foes. In fact, as I mentioned previously, he often goes out of his way to ruin expectations that specific characters are these formidable and fearless people. This is because, as Oda has stated, it's not fun to draw characters without any flaws or eccentricities. So to constantly bring in these toxic arguments that only inspire squabbling and pointless tangents is a disservice to your enjoyment. That being said, I do understand that this can be quite fun for some people. So I'll talk about a recent example of this, because it's still fresh in the fandom's consciousness. That is, Zoro's role in Wano. He's been hyped up to extraordinary standards for this arc, because it's samurai themed, so people are expecting that his swordplay will finally be tested after effortlessly defeating his opponents in the New World so far. That's a reasonable assumption, but where it becomes problematic is those within the Zoro and Sanji fandoms, whose goal is to seek out his mistakes or feats and use them as cannon fire against each other. It's a perpetuating competition where people will associate themselves with a character, see the established rivalry Oda has portrayed, and fling shit as if to protect the sanctity of their character's perceived competency. This fragility is breaking the fandom apart when there's really no need. Flaws are good. Zoro doesn't have to be this resolute force of pure badassery every time he appears. Neither does Sanji, or any character for that matter. In fact, many have made the argument that Zoro has lost a little bit of his flair because he doesn't properly emote anymore, and he rarely finds himself in trouble of his own making. There's something that all One Piece fans love about the series, and that is the expressive, layered world and the interesting characters that inhabit it. Big reveals such as the introduction of the road poneglyphs in Zou serve as huge talking points among the community, but they also induce weird expectations of the series. I've felt this more and more over the years, especially in the latest two arcs. This might be partly due to Oda's increased pacing, citing a need to finish the series sometime soon, and thus trying to cram in as much content as humanly possible. In turn, this has led to understandable complaints about off-screening important events, but also a crazy expectation that Oda must incorporate some huge feat or crazy reveal with every new chapter. If you take a look at the reception and discussion on forums during the pre-time skip, yes, there is comments trashing a chapter because, in their opinion, nothing crucial happened. But I think I've made it clear that the online Western fandom has always had a vocal corner that lambasts Oda's writing and illustration. It's not something entirely new, but with growth in the fandom's size, this vocal minority starts to become larger, becomes louder, and more interruptive. If there is no huge dose of world building, an anticipated character reveal, or intense clashes, it's almost automatically dismissed as filler, wasting time. Why I bring up the past is because I can't imagine that many people who talk like this right now would have coped with the type of chapters Oda was putting out earlier on in the story. And I think that's exactly it. When a large portion of the fanbase caught up during arcs such as Marineford and Dressrosa, they'd binged the entire first half already. They could fly through chapters and episodes, and in my experience with others who have binged the series, not homed in on criticisms for less story-oriented, sometimes comedic chapters. When you have another chapter or episode to view, the breather parts becomes less irritating. People forget this, and it's driving the community towards toxicity. I'm going to be honest, this section of discussion is directed at the YouTube community for the most part. Don't worry, I won't be specifically mentioning anybody. Well, except for one person. I'll be using them as an example, but I must stress that this is not an attack on their channel. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So in essence, many One Piece YouTubers have an understandable habit of rushing out a video once a new chapter goes live. There's this frenetic tension to see who can upload first, and grab viewers that have just read through the chapter, and wish to view a recognizable face talking about it. Often this can simply serve as validation for their opinions, whether that be negative or positive. I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, but the pressure this puts on YouTubers can make them say things they don't really mean, or react in perplexing ways. When you don't have enough time to mull over your thoughts in a live reaction or quick review, it's easy to present views that change once an arc is completed, or when you've had sufficient time to think it over. Where this is best exemplified is in the analysis of Whole Cake Island. A YouTuber called Roger's Base was attacked for his opinions on the arc as a whole, citing poor writing and odd pacing decisions in his mixed view. This was confusing to his fans, because if you've watched his live reactions or reviews, you'd notice that week by week, he was pretty positive about each chapter, with a couple seemingly minor exceptions towards the arc's conclusion. Unfortunately, this disbelief arose in a toxic Reddit thread, thereby influencing a smaller subsection of the anti-Twitter sphere as well. Fans rallied against his perspective, calling him out for what they thought to be fake opinions in his weekly chapter discussions, and Roger was visibly upset by this pretty harsh backlash. But what went wrong? Well, the fandom gained up on him because they conveniently forgot that opinions do change. A reaction review or discussion at one point in time does not necessarily reflect their thoughts and beliefs at another time. People's opinions aren't set in stone. They develop with time, and are influenced by a variety of internal and external sources. It should also be noted that One Piece has a strong streaming community, which can enable discussion and arguments where there previously was none for many individuals. When you're bouncing thoughts off each other in this contained echo chamber, perspectives can be amplified and changed. Ultimately, these unwarranted expectations of a YouTuber and the platform's blatantly malfunctioning search algorithms are driving the YouTube fandom towards toxicity. I'd like to cap everything off here because I could go on forever listing problems I have with the fandom, such as the complete dismissal of the anime adaptation. Maybe if you really want me to expand on these, I might do it in a separate video, but don't hold me to it. I realize they get progressively more unique to me as a person, so I'd rather keep in only the essential issues for this video. What I'd like for viewers to take away from this are 4 things. Please don't forget that Oda creates a series for young boys. Stop looking for power level debates. Keep your expectations of weekly chapter content in check. And be more understanding of the innate problems of posting to the YouTube platform. We all love following One Piece, and it really frustrates me that we're growing in numbers, but not necessarily in maturity.